If we grow up, why can't we grow down? After all, this term is linked to one's mentality, not our physicality. And the expression itself is surrounded by such positive connotations, as opposed to its opposite. And we know this because at some point when we're growing up, many of us had that adult turn around and look down at us and say, "You need to grow up." I just love it just once. If a child turned around, looked up at the adult, and with a confident but sweet voice said, "Really? Don't you think it's you that needs to, grow down?" Because after all, it's perspective we're talking about here. And in these situations, it's the adult that owns it. But what happens when that perspective is deceiving? What then for the child? Now, I'm not here to suggest that we should kick off the shackles of adulthood and embrace the chaos of childhood, go Lord of the Flies. What I am advocating, though, is that for those of us who work most closely with children, namely teachers, that we continue to seek out and explore ways that allow us to experience and see the world as children do. To counter two grown-up dynamics that are problematic for an educator's mindset. Age and expertise. Sounds ludicrous, doesn't it? That these two attributes can in any way be detrimental to one's teaching. But let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to our childhood. Because as children, we operate mostly as novices. That's what childhood's all about. An endless series of novice experiences, filled with uncertainty and trepidation, as we try things for the first time and fail or really, really struggle. And as we grow up, these experiences tend to dwindle to the point of never. And that was certainly the case for me until I arrived on the shores of Norway just under 6 years ago, and once again took up the reins of novicehood. You see, when you move to a new country, there's always that group of people who tell you, you need to embrace the culture. I thought, fantastic, the Viking spirit. No queuing, no please or thank yous, brown cheese, lots of candles, and of course, winter sports. So I kind of let my ego get the better of me. I said, I'm going to do what I think is cool. Forget skiing, I'm going to snowboard. I pictured myself on the mountains, twisting and turning with grace as I manoeuvred that snowboard. The Norwegian air fleeting across my face, a man in control of the elements. With me on that first day was my Norwegian wife, my 2 boys, and my brother-in-law. All wearing skis and none looking as cool as me, as I stood there with authority, certainty, and confidence. I looked the part, and I thought, surely that's half the battle. So as I walked towards the slopes, I was overcome with a sense of giddiness, until I came face to face with what for a short time I described as a weapon of mass destruction. The T-bar. Now, do not let appearances be deceiving. This device has the ability to instantly destroy one's confidence, to humiliate and to embarrass. It can strike fear and anxiety into the strongest of wills. And it can make any adult in any professional sphere once again understand what it feels like to be a novice again. So there I was as I watched this contraption propel my 2 boys up the mountain. My turn. The blonde Swedish attendant asked me to take hold of the T-bar. I smiled, told myself, you can do this, you've got this. And I did do it, for approximately 3 meters. The blonde Swedish attendant came running to my aid. He had this sympathetic smile on his face. I sensed the people in the queue grinning behind me and imagined them thinking, he's either Danish or English. Alas, not to be discouraged, let's try again. 6 meters, Again, 10 meters. Again, 5 meters. The only thing I was actually succeeding at this point in time was looking like I was failing well. Underneath, I was a bubbling mess of frustration with just a hint of anger. How was I meant to snowboard if I couldn't even get to the top of the mountain or small hill in most Norwegians' eyes? Step forward, my brother-in-law. 1 meter 92 in height, fair hair, chiseled, muscular build. Now, some people say that Norwegians are born with skis on their feet. In his case, he snow jumped out of his mother's womb on tailor-marked skis. What's worse, he's everyone's best friend. A lovely guy, and man crushes are a common occurrence. So there I was, baby Bambi on ice, the eternal novice, stood next to an adult Simba in his natural habitat. The epitome of expertise, the ultimate Viking. And I can tell you now, I really did feel pretty inadequate. So I wrapped my arms around him as he took confidently hold of the T-bar, and we were propelled up the mountain. And this was many moments like that on my snowboarding journey that were filled with uncertainty and repeated failure and frustration. And that was the first time in decades, at the ripe old age of 40, I once again encountered that novice experience. An experience I thought I'd left in the past, in my childhood, before I grew up. And it was an adventure filled with humility and desperation. It was really hard. There was no foundations to build upon. And it took time and effort. And I can imagine that's definitely not on most adults' bucket lists. I mean, why would it be? We spent a lifetime gravitating from these novice experiences. We want to feel comfortable, confident, and to imagine that we've got some form of semblance of control. And actually, that's largely down to neurological reasons. Because as we get older, as opposed to old, we do prefer stability over change. And that's not necessarily a good thing for teachers. Now, it's reassuring to know that the adult mind is slightly more flexible and volatile than we once thought. It's still less malleable than a younger brain. So rewriting and reconnecting all those synapses is much harder as we get older. And consequently, participating in new, authentic novice experiences is to a large extent no longer appealing to us. We just don't want to do it. And that's a problem. You see, these experiences can give us a valuable insight into the learning journey that many of our children go through on a day-to-day basis. One filled with frustration, repeated failure, and uncertainty. And this experience and this insight is needed now more than ever in an educational climate with a growing expectation in our profession for teacher expertise. Something which is potentially going to distance us even further from a child's mindset. I mean, let's just take a moment to think about that. Child, adult. It's a pretty big gulf, exacerbated by the knowledge gap between a novice and an expert. So as teachers, we need to find ways to minimize that distance while at the same time developing our expertise. Because as teachers, we should be experts with a responsibility to continue to upskill. Because we work with the most precious resource on earth, our children. Now, the children I'll teach will disagree with me. They'll say, come on, sir, the most precious resource on earth is surely a mobile phone. And the parents of those children I teach will probably say it's some form of concoction that offers them more me time or more sleep. But my thinking here largely revolves around the idea that the future of our world largely depends on what our children make of it. They are our tomorrows. So what do we do with the most precious resource on earth? We place it in the hands of experts. Take uranium, another precious resource, and the potential to be a weapon of mass destruction, just not quite as dangerous as the T-bar. We want the best people working with it, harnessing its power to do good in a safe and caring environment. We want people at the top of their fields. Likewise, the same should be said for our children. So, in one hand, we want teachers with expert subject knowledge, with the ability to tackle misconceptions and to organise ideas. And at no point should a ceiling be placed on a child's academic development because of a teacher's own limited knowledge. That just can't happen. It's a non-negotiable. Yet, perhaps on the other hand, education is deeply relational. It's about human connection. And while it's the fluffy abstract part of the process, educators the world over will advocate that student-teacher relationships are key to a child's academic success. As teachers, we have to build trust with the children we teach. They have to trust that we care for them, support them, and understand them. And most importantly, that we can see the learning through their eyes, both cognitively and emotionally, as novices. Yet this very relationship is in jeopardy by our need to function as experts, because our expert perspective is deceiving. As experts, when information or knowledge is easily accessible to us, we form the impression that the same happens for others, even children. Somewhere along the line, it's crazy in our journey in life, we've forgotten that our decision-making process is based upon millions and millions of experience moments that allow us to form answers or see the bigger picture in a matter of milliseconds. This process has rather rubbish ramifications for the children we teach. You see, although we recognise that a child doesn't understand or they can't do something, this is key, we think they should. I just wonder how many times this situation arises in any given classroom, in any given school, on any given day, and at what cost. Because in those moments where we recognise the child doesn't understand, but think they should, do we wear our thinking in our facial expression, in our tone of voice, or even in the language we use? And what's more, to what extent does this process shape our thinking towards the children we teach? Do we look outward as opposed to inward? Do we somehow think that the problem lies elsewhere, in the abyss, as opposed to our own perspective and our own teaching? Have we lost the ability to see through the lens of those we seek most to develop, our children? You see, expertise has the potential to simultaneously be a blessing and a curse for those seeking to develop others. We need to find a balance to our expertise. And one of the ways we can do that is by fighting our aging mindset and growing down. I feel when I remember. So when the dark side of expertise manifests itself in my classroom context, the T-bar is no longer a weapon of mass destruction. It reconnects me with the novice experience. It prompts me to try and understand the learning through the novice lens, the lens, more often than not, our children wear in the classroom. Now, I am actually happy to report I can snowboard with some grace down a mountain. And I have chosen to undertake new novice experiences in the form of cross-country skiing and learning to play the guitar. And what these experiences have taught me and remind me of is that sometimes it's necessary for us to go backwards as educators to help children move forward. We need to grow down. If our experiences determine our outlook, if we are the sum total of our experiences, then perhaps we should think wisely about our choices. I urge you to choose novice experiences. I can guarantee they will be frustrating, annoying, humbling, but they'll be worth it. For if our role is to develop the most precious resource on earth, we're best to remember what it feels like to be a novice again. So as a minimum, we can be experts with empathy. Thank you.